Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. I'm moving a little bit slowly. I'll speed it up a bit, and again, feel free to reach out just to go over anything in office hours that you'd like to go over. So next, we're going to add another generic material, but this time instead of mapping our own texture, what we're going to do is use one of V-Ray's textures to create tiles. So when you right-click the texture slot, you can click tile. What that does is it gives you kind of a surface that you can choose kind of the size of the tiles, the width of the grout, the color, and that'll be useful for those kind of turquoise tiled rooms. So let's go ahead and pick a color um, relatively similar to what we're trying to copy. And again, you can edit these things in Photoshop. It's not too important. So we'll set that color. I've already gone ahead and kind of tested out what works, but you'd obviously kind of want to look maybe similar to how we did the beams using render view to look at what dimensions of tiles work best. But for us, we're going to do 2 and 0. We haven't applied it to anything yet. It's a bit easier if let's go ahead and apply it to the tiled wall layer. And then we can see it in the interactive render as we make these changes. Okay, there it is. So that color might be a bit. Oh, and if you want to get back to edit it, you go in and go down and look at the tiles kind of subcategory. So let's just make this a bit more neutral, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word. Anyways. And then we're also going to adjust the mortar kind of so it's not so big here. And that you just do down here, gap HV, horizontal, vertical. And let's do 0.3. Okay, so that's fine. Again, we're going to kind of add the texture and detail to that in Photoshop. So that's a good example of how V-Ray can kind of quickly, especially if you were doing like a tighter tile count, V-Ray can really kind of quickly give you the bones that you then work in Photoshop. So let's go back to 2, 0. And then we'll create one more material, the last one we're going to create. Actually, we're not going to use this down here. We're going to go left in the flyout and use a V-Ray material. There's tons of them already here. You can also download them from a number of websites. But we're going to go into wood and laminate. We're going to choose plywood C. Where is that? Plywood C, 50 centimeters. And then you just drag it over. And we'll apply that to the wood walls layer. And that's going to be these walls here. And as it turns out, the scale that V-Ray kind of, they adjust it. Generally, the V-Ray materials are a bit smarter. They can kind of map on a bit better. And we're just going to leave it as is. We are going to maybe give it just a little bit of a color correction to make it, again, just for reference, let's pull this in. Yes, we'll make it a little bit lighter. And you can color correct anything, including these V-Ray materials. So right-click, color correction. Let's just give it a bit of brightness. And if you wanted, let's say, to make it more yellow, you can give it a bit more yellow in its hue or purple, whatever. Good. That looks fine. So now we're ready at this stage to do a kind of final render, even though it's obviously not an intense render, kind of measuring light or anything. But we'll go back and we'll adjust the render output. We can stop this interactive render. We'll adjust the output back to that 1024 by 800, and that'll be just like a slightly bigger image that'll be better to work with in Photoshop and to show on something like Miro. So now we've adjusted that. We'll go here to an actual render. Normally, and we'll go through this in other tutorials, you'll look more at things like the exposure and the type of render you're doing, but for this diffuse kind of render element we're using, it really doesn't matter. It's a kind of separate thing. So we'll just go ahead and render that. We might as well put the quality up. I don't know if that changes anything, but just in case. Then we just wait for it to render. All right. Well, that's weird. Something weird it looks like happened to our white wood that we'll go back and adjust. Maybe for the sake of time, I'll fix it. And when we move into Photoshop, you can use the file that I uploaded, or you can go ahead and kind of, probably it's just a matter of resetting that scale that we had set. But I won't go back and redo that right now. But it's easy enough to fix. Everything else looks fine. The beams look good. Okay, so now that we're on this diffuse layer, we'll go ahead and save that channel. You'll choose a place you'd like to save it. Let's just call it diffuse interior. And then we'll go down to that other channel we created, which is the material ID color. And that's what we're going to use to mask out these other areas or parts of this image. So we'll also save that material ID. Great. Okay, so let's move over to Photoshop.